I would like to welcome you to the Scalable Cities Café. Today's topic is on urban digital twins. We have with us here our experts who will be sharing all of the knowledge and all of the experience, the case studies, best practices, and everything that they have identified across all of the Scalable Cities project solutions and examples that they have in their research. So please sit back, enjoy. I hope you are able to grab a coffee or a tea and enjoy with us this hour and learn something more about urban digital twins. A bit about Scalable Cities. The session is organized by the initiative of the European Commission, Scalable Cities. It is here to support all of the projects and cities and all the experts working under smart cities and communities projects. And those are here to help identify and promote all of the solutions that are there to scale up all the innovations across Europe. The aim is to find all of the innovative solutions across various areas, be it mobility, smart buildings, smart infrastructure or data platforms, new business models, and among others also digital twins that have been piloted across lighthouse cities and then are being followed or replicated through follower or multiplier cities. The initiative has currently already 142 unique cities and is grouping together 28 different projects. So all of the experience and all of the case studies that you will hear from our experts today is actually coming from the analysis of these projects and the solutions in these cities. The Scalable Cities community actually started already quite some time ago and has actually developed from focus on individual buildings, then to individual districts, to whole smart cities and more holistic solutions, how they are brought about. The newest addition to the community are the 8 positive energy district projects, and we hope to continue the community to share the knowledge and share all of the experience that has been accumulated throughout all of the, among others, also through these sessions. I would not like to kind of keep you further away, so let's talk a bit more about today's session. The aim of the session is not only to learn about digital twins, that is the key, and that's why the experts are here, but also to share your own knowledge and share your own experience. I know, and I can see already we have here several experts on the call that either are working in a city on digital twins, on either you are already developing one or you are looking to replicate one from one of our pilot cities. So you are here also to discuss, to engage with the experts, to share your knowledge and ask questions, exchange ideas, and really discover everything that the community has to offer to you on the topic of digital twins. We do not only have this session, but for those who are already following for quite some time, the Scalable Cities Café is in the second series, has already had several sessions. There was one on innovation procurement, on replicating smart city solutions in small and medium-sized cities. There was another one on energy communities, on empowering cities with AI, and the last one of this year is planned for the 10th of December on enabling positive clean energy districts. So today's sessions is on urban digital twins. And I have a couple more housekeeping rules for you. Today's session is being recorded. by attending the session and participating in it, you are giving your consent with for the footage to being used for the purposes of recording and placing it online and sharing the knowledge that is being imparted within the session to our public. If you do not want to be recorded, please, you will have to then leave the session now. And if you don't want your camera to be on, you don't have to have it on. We have the experts who are there with the camera and me, but all of the attendees, that I would leave that up to you. If you would like to ask a question, my recommendation would be to turn it back on. We also encourage to have questions and engage with the experts. We have a dedicated session on Q&A at the end, but if there are other very burning questions that will come to you throughout the discussion, please do not hesitate, raise your hand, and you can join the discussion in between as well. The recording after a small post-production will be then also placed online and will be shared across the website and all of the social media channels of Scalable Cities. As I said, we also would like to engage with the experts and with the topic. So we have a Slido for you. You can either join the Slido questions and Slido answers by scanning the QR code on the screen, or by going to slido.com and typing the number with the hashtag. So without further ado, I spoke too much, and I think it's time to actually introduce our experts and let them to speak a lot more. We have Hyekyung Imottesjo from CitySync Solutions in Gothenburg in Sweden. We have Nikolas Neubert, who is an expert in digital urban planning. We have Bruno Ávila from the city of Amsterdam, head of digitalization, process and information. And we have Dr. Sabina Reichert, who is an urban and regional planner at Futurium Urbasofia. So these are the experts that will be sharing all of the knowledge with you. So please sit back and enjoy. First and foremost, I would like to ask everyone, since you are joining a session on urban digital twins, what is your knowledge with the subject? What is, in your opinion, a digital twin? Please either join the Slido by the QR code or go on slido.com and you can answer our first question. Is it for you a virtual representation of a physical asset? Is it a digital tool that models the physical systems? Is it a simulation platform? Is it a collaborative digital space? Or is it a software solution that integrates real-world data? And I see that some of you are already answering the question. I'm gonna ask very shortly also our experts to react to that when we reach a couple more answers. But I think we already have quite some answers, and maybe we can have a look at the top answers. So there seems to be kind of a discussion between whether a digital twin is a digital tool that models physical systems and helps improve decision making, or it's a software solution that integrates the real world data for better urban management. So I'm going to ask our experts, what is then a digital twin?
Yeah, maybe I could comment shortly on that. I think the first answer is looking quite nice. Not only physical systems can be modeled, but usually you can also have social systems, economic systems, if they have a direct impact in human settlements or in cities. And for the second, I think it's also looking nice, but not always you have you try to have real world data for sure, but you could also use it for public health, for economic development, and other use cases than urban management.
And I would like to add here that a key difference for me, I think this is sort of, it brings me back to the time when we were trying to define what a smart city is, because 136 definitions popped up everywhere over the internet. And I think that this is part of the co-design of definitions. But what I think also is a key characteristic of urban digital twins is that, unlike the traditional urban modeling tools that we had in the past, these are dynamic, they're interactive, they're providing real-time insights. So this is a key, let's say, separation from other ways of looking at the urban environment. The digital twin comes with the component of transforming static models into dynamic models, in which you can apply all of these tools and look at forecasting or urban management and so on.
Thank you. So we already started with a small definition of the concept of an urban digital twin, but maybe we can dwell a bit more on the question, and you can tell me how is it different, because Bruno, you already started stating a bit the difference between the various answers and what actually the urban digital twin is in your analysis. So maybe we can look a bit more about the concept of the urban digital twin, but also how does it differentiate from the traditional urban modeling and data analytics tools.
Yeah. Just say I think Sabina said it quite nicely, that we were talking about dynamic models, interactive. And I think also one key difference is that the digital twin tries to be more accessible. So usually web-based, while you have, if you have like simulation software, they're usually like very heavy and quite difficult to use. And then with the digital twin, you actually try to make it as collaborative as possible to share with different departments, institutions.
Bruno, I would even add just one word to that. I would call it, in a way, a democratization of that, because I think we had this one definition saying it's a software, and I think that's exactly what I would not name it, because as you just said, Bruno, it's web-based, so it's very accessible. So I think it's a tool to explore, and I think we see more and more efforts even to make it explorable, even to people who are not so close to the classical planning. And I think we'll look at different use cases and so on and so forth in the course of the discussion. But I think that's a major difference to me. It's not only useful to the inside, it's not a classical tool which just authorities or planners can use, but it's very good to give access to data, but in a very simple way. I think in the course of our exploration with different cities, one can see that this also for sure looks very differently. And let's say the touch and the feel is always a bit different, but in a way, like, I think this democratization is a key point.
If I add to that democratization, I also think this is a great tool for not so much of collaboration, but also co-creative with the citizens and all different stakeholders, adding to the complexity of all the city components that we can kind of access and understand and create some kind of simulations and test out scenarios and such for better decision making. Co-creativeness and accessibility, I think, is very important for the digital twin, especially urban digital twin, since the stakeholder groups are very wide and very complex. So this is the importance of the platform itself for the cities.
Okay, so we've heard a lot of various definitions and what are the important aspects of the digital twin. And we talked a bit about the democratization and co-creation. And then, so my next follow-up question would be, okay, but with whom then? So who are the key stakeholders? Who are the ones in urban planning and management that can benefit most from such a urban digital twin? Is it in city planning? Is it in traffic and mobility management? Is it citizen engagement or energy efficiency? And of course, there can be a lot more, but I'd like you to kind of also first our audience to think about that, and then also our experts to explain a bit more where they see it. So we see that there seems to be quite a prevailing answer in city planning and zoning as being the one that can benefit most from digital twins. And maybe our experts can tell us whether they agree with that or not.
I think they're all good examples of things that could benefit from having a digital twin. So what I think it's interesting in city planning and zoning is that it's actually quite new to really like use data to plan the city for the future. If you see like during the last century, like all the city expansion plans, they were pretty much based on an ideology or aesthetics, and now we really have the chance to estimate, to measure the performance of a neighborhood, and also what's the impact of this neighborhood to the rest of the city. So I think there's where the potential is also for the others. I think they are using already digital twins more deeply. And for city planning, they're mainly like using for visualization, but I think that there's way more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with Bruno. I'm a city planner and I like seeing this response. It's not just city planning and zoning. I think it's city development overall. But again, zoning is very interesting to me because the way that we are doing zoning is rather anachronistic still. We are looking at several challenges, especially in bigger cities that have the power and capacity to deploy urban digital twins, such as overcrowding, housing issues, and so on and so forth in all areas basically across Europe. So this is one of the very interesting case studies. But of course, it's also coupled with the citizen engagement and participatory approach, because participation is inherently baked into the planning and zoning process. So these two kind of work together. But we can also look at citizen engagement and public services as a standalone application. I would also maybe look also because of what we've seen in the news in the last few years at disaster response planning and forecasting, and the way that we are deploying forces and resources in different scenarios. So basically scenario building to cope with the effects of climate change in cities. But I think that these are the most important case studies. You can do them all. You can start with one, and then we're going to probably explore with the further discussion. But yeah, I think that this is it's interesting, and also looking at traffic and mobility, for example, or energy efficiency. I think that there are larger components of something that is more, let's say, infrastructure management and optimization, because a lot of the use cases that we've seen deal with, for example, optimization of water transport supply, of course, water, energy, other kinds of utilities. And the digital twin usually is very helpful in making the necessary tweaks and adjustments there. So again, a possible use case that is a large set of benefits.
According to the case studies we have, we have made, yeah, we have made. There were a lot of use cases, especially for improving the public services. I actually prepared one case study from Valencia that is kind of connected to elderly people's welfare, which is the same problem that in Asian countries. I'm from South Korea, but I was an architect in Japan. When I was doing architecture work, we had a big problem with checking the safety of the elderly. How do you ensure that the elderly who live alone are safe and still alive? So they had this pilot where the postman would go to the houses every month to hand deliver a greetings card to an elderly who lives alone. So you kind of check and you see that they're alive. But in Valencian cases, they're integrating their public registry, demographics registry and housing registry with the existing water digital twin for water infrastructure. So they can ensure that when a water supply is suddenly ceased or nobody's using the water, then they can kind of have some idea like, yeah, okay, maybe something happened, we should check on these people. So yeah, even if it's maybe more poetic to deliver a greeting card every month to check, like personal touch, but still as improving public services for this kind of people in need, I think digital twin has great potential. So yeah, engagement and public services.
Thank you very much. I really love that example and the contrast between how actually it is done in different countries. In the meantime, I was just preparing for the next question because we talk about the digital twins, and you've already started a bit showcasing its importance in both urban planning and zoning, in disaster forecast and planning and scenario planning, but also in kind of taking care of the vulnerable communities or vulnerable parts of the society. So can we talk a bit more about why are the digital twins considered a game-changing technology for cities as opposed to what technology was available before? And how are they also helping them with decision-making and operational efficiency? What are the super unique benefits that they bring?
I can start. Maybe my colleagues will will continue. I think that I would personally break this down into several benefits that are, as a package, unique from our opinion, for with respect to digital twins. The first one is, of course, the capacity to amalgamate, integrate real-time data, and to apply that data to problem solve and find solutions. So basically to collect a large amount of data, to analyze it, to visualize that data, and to transform that into better policy with the use of human element. Again, this is a tool. It is a very nice tool, but of course it leverages the insights and the capacity to transform that into better policy by the actual decision makers. The second one is also, as we've discussed and you've mentioned, Veronica, a little bit earlier, the capacity to predict, or better yet, to perform predictive analysis and to model scenarios. And this is very important and very valuable, especially for cities that do not have the actual luxury to deploy the large-scale urban renewal projects of the 1980s. We just don't have that money lying around, and we don't have that capacity, and it just doesn't make sense. So by running these scenarios with respect to urban renewal, with respect to disaster planning and so on, we can actually test the better solutions for the city before we're actually committing the funds. The third one relates to governance, and for me, I think it's very important, and I will stop after this one. It's about the fact that so far we've had tools or applications to be used in urban planning, for example, and the department is king. But an urban digital twin actually relies on interdepartmental coordination. And this is it could be heaven, it could be hell. But what it does is actually look at the proactive problem solving of how to get administration to work together, because you need the data and the people of all the departments to make things work. So it's actually a objective driven or a vision driven breakdown of silos, and those digital twins that are successful have managed to actually solve this integration and solve the problem of, overall political commitment. So integrating transport and energy, or urban planning and public participation, visualization, and so on and so forth, that requires the actual interdepartmental coordination, something that a lot of cities still struggle with. It's just another vector to convince maybe cities to put a little bit more effort into that.
I think that was very, very nicely put, Sabina. I think I would go back to the question and just change this game-changing technology, because I think we always, dealing in this environment with like novel instruments, I think there is always, we're quickly running into the risk of an over-expectation. And I think what What Sabina was just highlighting is actually, it's more of a game-changing agent in terms of it has a transformational power to the inside of how we basically plan and operate cities. And I think this is where the game-changing is coming out. Itself, I would actually not call it a game-changing technology, because I think then we quickly go into the circles of, well, now we have one and it doesn't solve all the problems, and we thought it will solve all the problems. And I think there one has to be pretty careful actually in the positioning. But I think there's definitely this internal change agent. This is how I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And that also reflects, I'm sorry, on the game-changing way of the way that actually cities interact with their citizens. And that's the third thing. It's the possibilities of public participation or enhanced stakeholder engagement, if you will. Because what I think that the digital twin does is offer the possibility of having a much more profound, relevant and engaging way to ask citizens of their opinions and to ask citizens of even their data. When we're looking at these schemes or, I don't know, renders of beautiful urban parks, you know, citizens can always express their opinion, but when you're actually running the simulation and when you're running the possibility of citizens actually selecting a scenario or another with the use of the digital twin, that's much more immersive. It helps people understand. It may break down some of the resistance and the NIMBYism for urban projects. And it may also be a very good solution for actually engaging citizens in urban monitoring, citizens as observatory, and so on and so forth. So it has a lot more options for direct, let's say, I don't want to say public democracy, but it's direct citizen engagement.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know that you already had some examples in mind when you were describing some of the benefits of urban digital twins. In your research, you're looking at various cities and various solutions. Is there some that you would like to maybe point out? And we've heard already a brief example from Valencia, but I'm sure there is a lot more that our attendees would like to also hear about.
From the case studies and some examples that I kind of got in touch with or got to understand are that all this successful implementation of digital twin is very much needs-based and very small scale, or it has very specific needs. It's not very abstract needs of the society, but more so for instance, it was an example of this elderlies, welfare of elderlies, and then there are some examples of managing the speed of the first aid cars, you know, emergency vehicles. Like how do they reach, I mean, how do we intelligently manage the stop signs, for instance, so you never have to stop if that a vehicle is deployed to the hospital. So kind of ensuring the shortest way possible or most efficient way possible. So they had really specific like cases that they needed to solve, and then they kind of go from there. What can we use the digital twin for, or what kind of data we need? Another example was is a very simple case, also from Valencia. Their recommendation for successful implementation or testing of digital twin was to start very, very small. Like they have problems for people who are entering parking spaces to for the like physically disabled people to find the spaces and availability. So they just had thousands of sensors. They just put them in a parking space and kind of start working with that. How do we kind of make the citizens access to this information so they can actually understand the availability of the parking? So they kind of start from a very small pilot, and you know they have possibilities to scale it up. So that was some of the lessons I learned from all the studies we did.
Perhaps I can share one more from Sofia, and I think that's an interesting case in that regard. If you look at the success behind it, or what makes a success, because basically it's an initiative which is not at the beginning hosted on the municipal side. And I think what is always interesting, and I remember we had these discussions quite often, and even in our last event at the Smart City Expo, what was kind of first? Like, was the technology, so the digital twin first, and then you desperately try to find use cases, or you firstly have like a strong need, you define that, and then you come up with use case, digital twin, and so on and so forth. And I think actually in Sofia, the digital twin was first, and then they started to explore. So it's actually the other way around, but still, having that said, highlighting one of the successful cases there, which was into the planning of social infrastructure. So directly into the planning of kindergartens. And that was something actually they went into a very explorative way, like what kind of applications and use cases might be interesting. And that was something which hit a nerve, because actually that's something which we have not really talked about yet, efficiency. At the end of the day, digital twins bring into the whole operation, but also the planning of cities, because for sure they were until this moment following the classical planning codes and also the norms for distributing social infrastructure within the city. And then through the digital twin, they could actually merge the different data sets and make that planning much more on target. So I think it's quite an interesting case, and also having in mind this other message, tech first or use case first. And though I think that's perhaps a discussion for another point.
And I would just maybe add a use case from Amsterdam, just to represent the city. But like two examples that I think are nice. One is for crowd management. They managed to gather data also from the transportation authority to manage how busy it is in some places in the city. As you know, we have a lot of like narrow streets, and they can get really crowded. So specifically some festivals, some specific dates, and with this monitor, they get data from different sources like mobility cameras, and get just like can react on real time, even like to organize the flow of people into directions. That on one street people only go this way and the other way, like walking. So that's interesting. And the others, like monitoring the canals of the city. They have an algorithm that's open source also that can look online to monitor, like to monitor the flow of boats, and if they are noisy, if there's some music, in order to estimate how busy it is also in the canals of the city. So I think it's nice when you get information from different sites to get your insights.
And if I may, one last example, or maybe two, I think that one of them, what is a successful case study? It depends where you are. If you're just starting up, then you need to find, inspiration in these small demonstrator cases that actually show very clearly that there's a value to some specific use case that you can use in your city, like Leipzig, for example. They managed to trim down the time for planning for the daycare infrastructure planning by 2 weeks with a small demonstrator. Everybody was on board. Everybody saw the results. It was crystal clear. Then if you are a little bit more advanced, then a successful use case starts to become a use case in which you can show the value of overcoming some of the barriers and challenges that we're going to talk about. And I just want to mention, for example, Valencia, because they are very advanced with their digital twin. What they and other cities have been noticing is that it's very hard to actually come by data, especially from municipal providers. So you have the digital twin, you have the infrastructure, it's yours, you're farming out management, and then the granular data that you actually need in order to optimize the systems is not there. So they came up with this idea that they have every 10 years, a city tenders out the management of some systems, and you actually create within that tender the necessity to provide data back to the city. This was one of the problems of Rotterdam in the beginning. It's a problem for many other cities, especially in Eastern Europe. You can overcome that by smartly thinking about your goal, your digital twin, and then what you need to put into, and then you can find either, and this is also something that Valencia did, either structural funding to expand your sensor network, or you can actually make somebody else pay for that from a large scale contract that is a win-win situation between the city and an external provider. So that is one of the financial strategies that was very interesting to us, because it's a little bit of a lateral thinking. It's something that other cities can also employ. And so I would see it as a successful case study for again, a city that is a little bit more advanced in their digital twin implementation.
Thank you so much, Sabina. Before we go to the barriers, as you already rightly pointed out, I'd like to actually maybe ask our audience, because I see some people that I know are already planning or implementing digital twins in their cities in our attendees. And so I want to ask if there's some that would like to actually share their experience or their case studies and how they are using urban digital twins in their city.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm with the camera off, but I'm in the train. So, well, briefly, I know that the university, the Utrecht University in the Netherlands, it's started a project like 2 or 3 months ago about using digital twins for construction and demolition waste management.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is it
I don't
Twins
know.
for Resilience?
Say it again. It's called Upscale Project.
Okay.
Rotterdam municipality is involved, and Utrecht University, and I think some other companies that I don't know, because we are not directly involved with in that project.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's also worth mentioning, because we didn't have waste and waste management mentioned yet. So that's yet another great application. If there are some other good examples or case studies, if not, I'm sure that also our audience will think of some other questions and comments in the meantime, and we can maybe talk about the barriers. So we so far talked a lot about how great and efficient and very useful for everything from co-creation to planning to scenario forecasting it is to have a digital twin. But I am pretty sure also that there are still some issues in application or in actually implementing a digital twin in a city. What are the challenges when it comes to a city that wants to adopt the digital twin technology? Can you think about whether they are mostly technical, or is it financial, or is it related to the governance in the city? Where are the biggest barriers?
No, something I could mention that I think it's relates a lot to governance. I was working in assessment of digital twins in Amsterdam, and you see that the digital twins, they reflect the administration, and it's quite crazy because the city is one city, right? And you see quite often that those projects and the scope of those projects, they replicate whatever is what the department is responsible for. So if you have a department, Parks and Recreation, you're going to have a digital twin for that. But if it's park, recreations, and public health, you're probably going to take public health into account in your digital twin. So I would say the challenge is, especially like on the governance side, and how the not having like a strategy, like a citywide strategy for development of digital twins. So you depend a lot on the interest on specific people working on these departments, that they heard something about digital twins and they want to push that inside their department. But at the higher level, and then we compare to other continents, like in Asia, for example, it's pretty much obvious that when you have a city, if it's big enough, you really need to have a digital twin. You need to have like a control center, or you need to operate an integrated city management. And then from up in the government, you already have these guidelines to be able to follow up what happens in the city. And I think in Europe it's quite bottom up, and it's nice that those things are happening. But when it comes to the mayors and aldermen, they don't seem, they were mostly not as interested or not as aware of the role of a digital twin.
Okay.
For co-creation, we kind of point out that digital twin is a great tool for citizen co-creation or stakeholder co-creation. Here's the barrier for that actually happening would be the digital divide or digital illiteracy. Since even though this is very accessible and through visualization or using virtual reality or augmented reality, this is a great platform for co-creation, but still it is quite hard for a big proportion of the population to access this information for their use or to understand what kind of data is being fed. So this is some of the barriers, and I think this is a problem for gaining also political support, as Bruno just mentioned, because politicians would like to see tangible results which citizens kind of support. I mean, basically that you can get popularity by doing something, but if the citizens don't really have the true access, then it's kind of compromising that potential.
I agree with Bruno and Hyekyung, and I think that it mostly boils down to the governance problem that reflects in different other categories. So, for example, the issue of not setting up a co-owned, pre-agreed vision of what exactly you need based on your city's profile, your specific city's profile. It's just importing, for example, nice best practices from other parts without actually fitting that within your context, your infrastructure, your governance system, and so on and so forth. That is a challenge. But once you're agreeing that, then you can devise the long-term strategy for funding. You can actually go and have and seek political support. The problem with the governance is that if you don't really have this kind of very clear image in the beginning, you put your right foot forward, so to speak, then of course you will have opportunities like all European cities to actually join in and implement some projects, and that's great. But the problem with that is that you're starting off depending on a grant with a limited long-term funding, and then you're finding yourself at the end of the project not knowing where to go because you've used some use cases that were pre-agreed within the consortium, but they don't really completely fit your context. And that's also something that if you're very, very focused on one or two of these, and you don't have the overall strategy and you don't have the overall stakeholder buy-in, then you also face some technical challenges, such as you're starting with a data silo and you're ending with that data silo. So you're not creating these horizontal links in order to gather and integrate more data. And last but not least, I think that a lot of the problems also stem from the issue of capacity. Now, Hyekyung was talking about the digital divide, and I think that this is also somehow applying interorganizationally for citizens. Sometimes we just need to focus on building the right capacity across departments for people to actually understand, even if it's just at the level of black box, what goes in, what comes out. What the digital twin is useful for, especially, the decision makers. And again, I think, there's a best practice here for Valencia. Actually, the departments that were in charge of, building and expanding the digital twin went to the mayor and said, look, we've devised a mayor's dashboard that has information from all of these departments, and it's going to be useful at a glance for you to understand the state of the city. And that was so well received that actually the political factor then went down and created or facilitated the exchange with other departments that were not so keen in the beginning for offering their data. So I think that's ways of overcoming these challenges.
Thank you so much, Sabina. If we are now to think about, because we heard a lot about what are the benefits, what are the barriers, what are the challenges, and how to overcome them. what is one single most important aspect of successful digital twin implementation? What would you also, I'm asking our audience to check whether they are still with us and whether they are listening well to what you're saying, but also I'm asking at the same time our experts, what is in your opinion the most important aspect of if I want to, as a city, implement a digital twin? Or is it none of those?
I like all of them. I like when this it kind of feels like when I'm in school and I think all the other ones are correct, all the options. But it's pretty much that. Like I think collaboration is interesting because it's what differentiates in a way the digital twins from other kinds of technologies or tools for city management, urban planning, and so forth. The real-time data integration. When you look at the definition of digital twin in the industry, you need real-time integration to be able to call it a digital twin. Otherwise, it's what they call a digital shadow. So when you have the data, but it's not real time, so they call it a digital shadow. But for a city, we have, like, in the concept of microbet, you also have the low frequency models, and those are models like for city planning, for transportation planning, where you don't really need the real-time data. If you have aggregated historical data, or if you have other kinds of data, can also call it a digital twin. But depending on the use case, yeah, definitely real-time data integration is super important.
I think I would add one thing which is not there. Sabina touched a bit on it, and that's a bit out of this selection. But I think to have it pretty clear what the business case basically for the digital twin actually is. And I think that doesn't have to be that it's simply kind of classically earns money. I think that's also a way of seeing it. So basically thinking about the revenue model, it could be selling the data or working with the data, whatever that might be. But also, I think the other discussion on the municipal side should be, well, if there are efficiency wins in it, that's also a business model that's quantifiable. And I think to have that clear from the beginning on is, I would say, one of the key components to make it a success. Because then that's what Sabina touched. What's the legacy? You know, if funding ends, or now for places who are starting it without a major EU fund, well, but how? And I think that's key.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikolas. I think somehow that kind of gets not necessarily conflated, but it is a part that is very similar to the collaboration capacities with stakeholders. Because in my mind, even if you're a department in a city, even if you are, I don't know, the university that made, the Gate Institute that made those in its digital twin in Sofia, and so on and so forth. You have a set of data, but then you also need something a lot of it from the outside. You need partnerships. So the collaboration capacities, from my point of view, mean actually the capability of whoever is the core team for the digital twin to reach out inter-organizationally, extra-organizationally for public-private partnerships, and to the citizens. Public-private partnerships, I think, are one of the best ways to leverage the potential value to external stakeholders and data providers of the digital twin in order to pursue long-term sustainability from a financial standpoint. So that is critical at the beginning, to understand who your partners are, and that factors within your business case. And then also, in the sense of creating value in a digital twin, that it has the possibility of offering something for free and something for money, and transforming it into an asset that kind of pays for itself in partnership with external companies, then that also could factor into the longer term financial strategy for a digital twin. The important thing is to get, grants for expansion, especially for infrastructure that you need if you want real-time data, but also to have this kind of constant influx, even if it's pay-per use or pay-per-download or any kind of other constant financial support, in order to keep the digital twin innovate. I think that's a critical thing. The needs of the city will change, and the digital twin of today is going to be probably, not responding to the needs of today T plus 2-3 months, years, and so on. So actually always having that in mind is really important. And that's for that collaboration, I think it's key, and good communication.
You've already touched upon that a bit with the business cases and the business models, but I'd like to dwell a bit on that point, because I think it's highly relevant also for further replication and scalability when we're looking at how can actually digital twins be either scaled up across the city. You said that, Sabina, that grants for a city could be something that could be highly relevant, and with that also then in terms of implementation, the collaboration. Are there any other good business cases that you can think about, in business models that we could help for the cities on the call, but also kind of more generally that we can recommend if they are looking to implement a digital twin? This is a good way of actually how do we convince the mayor or the decision maker to actually adopt the digital twin technology.
I think here there are some very good success stories with cities that offered some more, let's say, premium tier services for companies such as transport companies, such as utility companies, and so on and so forth, or logistics firms, or even, real estate companies, because that's valuable data. So, for example, the Leipzig has one of the core partners, a private sector partner that is integrated in the operational structure of the digital twin, and it contributes also financially because it is in their interest. So a lot of cities find these patterns of collaboration to be very valuable, and of course the partners also see the benefit. The idea is to align visions on what is beneficial to all parties. So it's basically a win-win-win, because ultimately the digital twin should be in the public benefit. But yeah, I think this is it's actually providing some sort of additional access to data based on either data exchange or financial contribution or infrastructure, private infrastructure usage for the digital twin. And this is a case-by-case study. It really, really depends on what the city owns, what the private partners own, what's the model there already, because the digital twin will not go ahead and change the status quo of everything. It needs to kind of start on with, using what's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just add, like, it's not necessarily a business model, but it's kind of like a concept of an ideology, is that the digital twin is a public infrastructure, and just like a road. So it's not that road's going to generate $1 million or something, €1 million in a specific time frame, but it's just something you need. And that's something I hear from some cities that are a little more advanced, and they think, yeah, I mean, we just need it, because it's just like it's the challenges of the future: climate change, resilience, public safety, crowd management. I mean, we just need it in order to be able to be an efficient government. And maybe this trend, and I then go to the second part of the question regarding the trends. I think being able to have this internal AI models that could provide answers to you about the city, about the status of the city, about projects in the city, based on the data sets and on the data that you have on your digital twin. I think maybe it's a trend. The immersive experiences with the virtual reality or augmented reality also could be also a trend for the near future.
Great. Thank you so much. I would like to turn back the question to the audience, and seeing that we are a bit running out of time, I really want to give the opportunity to the audience to engage and ask questions, and I'm sure that there's something that interests you to know from our experts that we haven't covered yet? You just need to either raise your hand or unmute your microphone and ask, or you can post it in the chat. So we have a question in the chat. What cities think about the cost of making digital assets?
Like, and you mean modeling 3D assets?
It was a question by Masaki Nakada, so maybe you can clarify.
Yeah. They are not. I mean, from the city perspective, they are not very keen on investing on that. That there's an idea that goes around that data is increasingly cheap. It's turning cheaper and cheaper, and this is true. But data collection can also be expensive. Especially if you want high resolution 3D mesh of the city, or if you want to model with a parametric design or rules, if you want to model your assets, it can be costly. I would say the cities are not jumping for it, excited to invest on modeling those assets because it's expensive. Because you need to, I mean, if you especially if it's like as built, if you want to model your assets as they are in the reality, just it can be very costly.
Thank you, Bruno. Do we have other questions? Okay, we seem to be going through the chat questions. So we have a second question about who will by Afras Mehmood. Who will provide the subsidy to implement efficiency improvements that are estimated by a digital twin to citizens?
Is this in regards to energy efficiency, the built environment, maybe? Okay. This is the answer probably is it depends. It depends based on the type of infrastructure, whether we're talking about public buildings, whether we're talking about private buildings, collective housing, individual housing. So, and whether we're talking, for example, between Western Europe and Eastern Europe under the cohesion policy, where there is still structural funding for the renewal of collective housing units, where there is a very strong co-financing by the European Commission in renovation and recently deep renovation. The important thing that I think should be the takeaway of the ability of the digital twin to generate, let's say, the optimal pattern or order in which to start these renovations and where to act first is something that is very akin to the 80-20 rule. So let's say 20% of effort, 80% of outcome. The digital twin can help, show where to actually perform these improvements. It can help show where the impact is maximized, where the need is the most. But ultimately, it does not have a bearing on who finances this. It's just maybe to show where the situation is dire, and then probably the public authority, the citizens, the homeowners association, it really depends on the constellation of factors here, need to reach a conclusion in terms of how to proceed with the renovation.
And we have another question. How do you manage the trade-off between creating a detailed, complex digital twin and ensuring that it remains user-friendly and provides clear, actionable insights for end users and not only the services implementing it?
It's a very, very good question. That's something we were experimenting in our workshop in Helsinki from the Sparks conference. you can as detailed it gets, like it can get quite complex, and you can kind of lose yourself in the amount of data and layers and everything that you have in your digital twin. And this is why it's interesting to cut your solution, your digital twin, into different pieces and make them independent and not necessarily relying on each other. So for example, if you have like the data sets, if they're stored nicely, and then you have like the simulation models, and then you have the interfaces, you can have like 10 different interfaces depending on the use case, depending on the department, as long as all of them are linked to the same data, and there's like one single source of truth. It's okay if if a specific department want to have a dashboard, the other want to have a list, the other want to have a 3D and then with information on it. So I would say trying to divide those elements, and by the what we call like a use case is the combination of a user with a need for information need, a specific information need, and an interface, and that could be called as a use case. So like be sure if there's what department and they only need to know this, just go straight to the point and provide this information to them. Not everyone's going to approach holistically all the layers of the city. So different interfaces, I would say. Same data source, different interfaces.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Or any comments, or, as I've asked before, any case studies? Well, if there are no further questions, I'm gonna then ask for kind of a quick summary. I have for our experts. If you had to give a recommendation to SAT that wants to adopt a digital twin, what are the kind of 3 main points or 3 keywords that you would like to tell them? But try to keep it brief and try to keep it to really 3 keywords, something that they can take with themselves to their back to their work, to their municipality or to their city, to see how they can actually implement it.
I'd like to start really quickly because I need to move also to another appointment. But I would say the most important thing is don't start your digital twin just you have the data sets, let's visualize them. Like try as much as possible to understand what are the pressing issues in your city, what are you trying to, which kind of information the departments of the people need, and try to focus as much as possible on solving a specific need of the municipality. That's what I would say. And thank you all shortly, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also have to kind of leave, but okay, I have very similar 3 key words. That's needs-based. That has to be based on the real needs that you need to solve. And also inclusivity, meaning not only digital inclusion, but also interdepartmental cooperation, including diverse stakeholders during all phases, even from planning and designing, and also incremental development. Not thinking, not going from the whole vision rather than starting small, like improving, learning, and then kind of iterating. And thank you for this session. I would really, I appreciate this session with you, and have a nice week. I kind of have to leave, so bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I completely agree with Hyekyung and Bruno. This was tremendously interesting to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the questions from the audience. I would say that there's 2. I have 3 keywords. One of them could go either way. So it's either a vision or MVP. I would personally love to start with vision first, because I'm a strategic planner, but you can go with MVP and, you can start the build, measure, learn loop. But if you're doing that, then the second keyword is interoperability, and the third is scalability. So if you start with a very small use case, you need to ensure the fact that you are leaving the floor to grow for the digital twin. If you're starting with vision, then I would say the second keyword for me would be co-development. Co-development means involving other partners, other departments, the citizens, and so on, in actually ensuring that you have an alignment on what the digital twin should do, so that you can actually reach that sustainability and scalability and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Thank you.
I think the only thing I would add without eating time, think about also the business case early on, because I think that's essential for the alliance you're working with.
And thank you so much, Nikolas, as well. I would like to thanks to all our experts that have shared their knowledge and experience with us, and thanks to our attendees that have also answered and our Slido questions and also engaged with the experts. You can then stay connected with us via the social media or the website. The recording is going to be published there. And you can also follow us for more of the Scalable Cities Cafes. The next one is on the 10th of December, so see you there. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.